Really good. Hello. The fact that you're here means that you've opened the very first newsletter of Let's Talk Shop for 2021. Awesome. So of course you've got all the juicy stuff down there in the newsletter if you have, all the news, tips, all that kind of good stuff. But the reason why you're watching this video, the reason why this video is awesome is because today, as with every Let's Talk Shop episode from now on, we'll include a tutorial looking at something specific in the world of e-commerce, right? So in this particular tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at site search, specifically site search migration and the lack of it in the world of SEO. So the problem is, when we think about an SEO migration for e-commerce, we think about all the pages with links, all the pages that we crawl, all the pages that are eligible for migration, right? That are accessible to search engines. Problem is, however, that site search is often left out. Not always, but can often be left out. And the big problem here is site search is directly correlated to the performance of conversion and sales. In fact, people that search using e-commerce site search are a heck of a lot more likely to convert than people who do not. So it's a big deal, a huge opportunity, and often something that's missed out when we think about SEO migrations. So the thing is, the solution is really quite simple. So we're going to take a look at a couple of examples today, a couple of things you can look at to sort that problem out, and as a result, get your site search on point, whether you're migrating to a new domain, whether you're migrating to a new tech stack, or both, right? Site search needs to be at the epicenter of that if you or your client site exists in the e-commerce space. It's just critical, it's essential, it has to happen. We're going to take a look at the big problem. You can see my Slack's blown up right now, so clearly I did put do not disturb on. And yeah, I will see you on the other side. Let's Talk Shop Tutorial 1 2021. We're going to be talking about site search migration. See you on the other side. Okay, hey ladies and gents, so we're going to get straight into this one. Site search and migration. So here's the problem. Let's say you're moving across to a new tech stack, or you're moving across to a new domain. So you'll go from say .co.uk to .com or .com.co.uk, you've had a rebrand and the whole domain changes, or you create a new subfolder to put it in, or whatever it may be, a subdomain. The point is that site search is so often missed out when we think about e-commerce migrations, and there's a lot of money on the table. In fact, there's this study from CXL, so I'm going to just share my screen with you real quick, just to show you what I'm talking about before we jump into the actual fixing of the problem. So here you can see on the CXL website, according to eConsultancy, up to 30% of e-commerce visitors use internal site searches, so it's a big amount of people. Due to the increased levels of purchase intent from searchers, they're known to convert up to 5 to 6 times higher than they would do compared to someone who doesn't use site search. So to not migrate your site search when you're moving from an old site to a new site is like, it's crazy, right? Especially, of course, in the world of e-commerce. So I recommend you go and take a look at this if you're in a situation where your clients are going through a migration, you're going through a migration, you're considering one, you've been through one and may have missed out site search. Take a look at this awesome post by Tommy Walker, and I'll put a link in the video, cxl.com/blog, and take a look. So let's jump into a really specific example here. So I'm just going to jump onto richardsands.com for a moment. And let's just assume that, to use an example, let's assume that Richard Sands have moved from richardsands.co.uk to richardsands.com. Now, Richard Sands, I'm a huge fan of this site because I'm a massive audio fan. I love technology and gadgets and stuff like that. So I'm constantly droning over the stuff that's on this site, especially in the sale, which there is conveniently right now. But we're not here for the sale, we're here to talk about site search. So yeah, let's just say they've moved from .co.uk to .com and they've missed out their site search. One of two redirect or lack of redirect behaviors can happen here. The first one is creating a 404. So someone's gone from, just to type something in. So we have richardsands.co.uk/search, and then say Samsung TV. Now, what can happen here is, because of course they've gone from .co.uk to .com, and site search hasn't been redirected, what can happen in these occasions is it just creates a 404. So it doesn't move to .com, it just creates a 404 because it wasn't considered in the redirect. Or something else can happen, which is that it redirects properly, so it redirects from richardsands.co.uk to .com, but goes to almost like a blanket catch-all page, which is kind of what happens on Richard Sands. So if I just do a search for this, richardsands.co.uk, and then Samsung TV, we can see we go to richardsands.com/search. And you see what I mean with the catch-all? So we're in a situation now where we have a specific query. So someone has gone to a URL, richardsands.co.uk search URL for Samsung TV. And rather than taking me to the Samsung TV search query on the richardsands.com site, it's taken me instead to like the root search subfolder on the richardsands.com website. And these are dangerous. These are the worst because when you think about it, you look in your 404 error logs, you look in your other errors and other reports, these often won't flag because it's resulted in a 200. So as far as you're concerned, if you're looking quickly at, through a redirection report, if you're comparing two crawls or crawling your old URLs and making sure there's no 404s or 500s, this often won't flag. But this is often the biggest concern that happens as a result of migrating and ignoring your site search, right? So how do we fix it? So we kind of know the problem now. We know that when you're moving from, in this example, richardsands.co.uk to richardsands.com, then it either creates a 404, which is a little bit easier to identify, or it actually creates a redirect, but it redirects to a blanket subfolder or the wrong place altogether. So what we need to do here is instruct product teams, SEO teams, web devs, whoever is responsible for making these changes, to put in a rule that preserves whatever it is, whatever captures that search query in the URL. So going back to this Samsung TV example here, we would want to create a redirect that makes sure everything is preserved in this particular queue parameter. So ideally what we want is richardsands.co.uk/search, Q equals Samsung, and then encoded space TV to be exactly the same here. So why is this so hard to explain? Jesus, it's actually really easy, but I'm struggling to explain it. Okay, so what we'd want is this, basically. We'd want this to redirect to this. We want it to go to that. So that means that if someone comes across a URL, if Googlebot or any other search engine is crawling it, it's an old email, it's an old merchandise banner, an old social media post, for example, then we can make sure any clicks on those URLs that include search queries are going to be preserved and carried across to the same query on the new website. That's going to be a huge help and is really, really important to take care of. So that's kind of a wrap on the topic of site search. Now, you can get more detailed in this, and I'll use a specific example of how you may or may not choose to go a level deeper than this. If we just search for Samsung TV on here, you can see that as many websites do, you've got these search parameters on the left-hand side here. So you, of course, every time you tick one of these, then in Richard Sands' case, it's powered by Ajax by the looks of it, so it's not generating any new URLs. But what you may have is a situation where you get additional parameters applied on top of those search queries if you're selecting filters, right? So you can choose whether to preserve those or not in the redirect. So again, using an example, let's disable that. So using an example, there may be a situation where you have Samsung TV, you selected color black, and the URL becomes this, and color equals black. How do you redirect that? So you could be in a situation where you preserve everything after all the parameters in the redirect, so that all combinations are preserved. So color, the search query, potentially the price range, and any other filters you've got applied. But in my opinion, I think that's a step too granular, because as part of the migration, you may have changed the products you sell, you may have simplified the categories or the filters, and as a result, what you can end up doing is creating more opportunities to create 404s and more opportunities to break an experience for customers. So my advice here would be to only preserve the initial search query. So if this was richardsands.co.uk and it redirected to richardsands.com, then I'd only want this in the URL preserved. So richardsands.com/search and then Samsung TV, stripping off any parameters that aren't responsible for the initial search query. So the downside of that, of course, is that you're losing the granularity of the search query in terms of additional filters applied, price ranges, colors, that kind of granular specification. But the positive side of that is that the search query itself in redirect will be more robust. It's more likely to find products because you're not being so specific in the actual redirect. So it's a relatively simple fix, even though for some reason it was really difficult for me to explain. I don't know what that's about. But it's a relatively simple fix and can have huge benefits if you get it right. And equally, if you don't get it right, it can have huge repercussions from an SEO conversion. Not so much an SEO actually, because in most cases, site search is excluded anyway, or should be from search engines. So your SEO won't suffer too much, but your conversions, your sales, and your usability of your site is going to suffer, especially if you're along this kind of line where 30% of all your sessions, all your visitors include site search. That's a third, almost a third. So it's a big deal. So that's it for this tutorial. Feel free to take a look at any of the tips and stuff you've seen in the newsletter below, and I'll see you the next one. Take care.